Doug Meyer, and welcome to Mountain Cat Guitars podcast number 2. We had a great time doing number 2 with Jamie Simpson from Booya Amps, who came over. And he's an amazing amp builder and an amp tech, and he works on Hammond organs, and he works on pretty much just everything that's old music geared. He's actually an amazing Hammond player, amazing bass player, amazing guitar player, pretty amazing dude. So we got into some really interesting stuff, and as usual with our podcast, we just kind of talked as if we were hanging out at my house or my shop, and got into some very interesting conversations. As Jamie's a very interesting guy, so we had a really great time. We hope you enjoy the podcast, and you can find these podcasts on our YouTube station and on iTunes. And we made some funny videos today, which I'm sure you'll see on the YouTube station, and we made some really great demo videos for Jamie's gear with some really cool guitars, so check those out on the YouTube station too, and hope you enjoy the podcast. Now here's the podcast. Hi, this is Doug Meyer from Mountain Cat Guitars, and welcome to Mountain Cat Guitars podcast number 2. Today we have Jamie Simpson from Booya Amps, came down from Lake
Hopatcom.
I cannot pronounce that.
Nobody
New Jersey. Which is a very cool place not far from here. And we're very happy to have Jamie here. How are you, Jamie?
Excellent, man. Thank you for having me over here.
And Jamie has a company called Booya Amp Services where he builds amps and he repairs all kinds of musical stuff. A Hammond organ.
Yeah.
Not too many people could do a Hammond organ these days.
There's a pretty small group of us that, try to keep it going, but
I remember even years ago it was hard to find somebody.
Yeah.
In the city it was hard to find a guy to do a Hammond organ.
It's really always been kind of difficult because they're not really for the faint of heart. I mean, every time I take the back off one, even people that own them, they look at them and they go, oh.
Yeah, the first time I ever saw one open was at your place. I couldn't believe the amount of solder joints you just see.
Yeah.
Like looking at you like, oh my God,
Yeah.
how do you figure out what's wrong with it?
Yeah, a lot of time and a lot of test equipment. It's quite
And you're
an
moving
adventure.
it, and people used to move these things around.
Yeah, actually.
How did they deal with that? The Allman Brothers, or one of those bands that were throwing them in trucks.
Sure. Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff used to be in cases, but those were in the days of liftoff cases. The whole ATA flight case stuff didn't come around.
Right, you see the Allman Brothers cases when they're leaving.
Yeah, like, exactly.
The Fillmore record, and they're not today's road cases.
No, they're not.
They're
very
like
thin.
cardboardy ones.
Exactly. So there's a company, I forget the actual name of the company, but they make these dollies specifically for moving pianos, organs, safes, anything that's, like dead weight. They're called roller carries, and they're like little mini hand trucks, and they have handles that come up like wheelbarrow handles.
Right.
Because the worst part about moving a Hammond organ is trying to lift one up and then carry it. You have to kind of shimmy around.
I did it once.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
And my friend had a van, and he had these
Ramps
ramps that came out of his house right into his thing,
Yep.
and it was still death-defying.
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
If it came off the ramp, it would have killed everybody.
Yeah, it's horrible. Over the years, people have developed different techniques. I mean, nowadays it's not even the end of the world because with backline trucks and they
Yeah, now it's all got so. I saw like a loadout, a Steely Dan loadout from SIR, and you're talking to them, and there's a piano sitting there. Next thing you know, it's on its side. Next thing you know, it's in a road case, and it's reeling out. You're like, whoa! And the whole room, it was the guys have gotten so professional too. They're incredible. You're talking to them, and the whole room is disappearing, and then all of a sudden it's in a truck.
Right.
But watching a piano go into a road case,
yeah, it's really
like
amazing.
Whoa!
And it's like it kind of defies physics in a way. You see, I'll never forget when years ago, when my folks bought a house, they moved a piano into this house, and the piano mover showed up at the old house.
Right, there were guys who were piano movers.
Yeah, they were professional.
They get
piano
them to
movers.
fourth floor. They take them up with ropes.
Right,
And stuff.
and they were the two scrawniest dudes I've ever seen in my life, and I was like, okay, I don't understand how this works. And they used leverage principles that have been around for thousands of years.
Like how they built the pyramid.
Exactly, and I was just like, oh.
Yeah, when people know what they're doing, it's amazing.
Yeah.
You're
So
one
I've
of those
heard.
people. You could fix a Hammond organ. You could fix all this old technology that a lot of people these days can't deal with, or if it just like old guitar amplifiers, they're all different anyway.
Sure. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, when you get into the Fender stuff, some of the stuff is kind of similar. I mean, Fender was pretty notorious for designing the normal channel and then the vibrato and then the vibrato reverb channel, and they've kind of recycled all those circuits through the deluxe reverb, the twin reverb.
The 5E3, and then
you know,
changed ever so slightly.
And
went to the next thing. I almost understand. When I open it up, I could see that that's the transformer, that's the choke.
Right.
I don't know how to fix any of it, but I know what it is.
Yeah, to fix it, you're like, hey Jamie.
Yeah, I don't even. I fucking didn't I put the tube in wrong once?
Yeah, that's right. I remember.
And it went in.
It went in.
See, people don't realize that. You know, like it seemed like when I always tell people this, when we used to ship amps, when we first started shipping things like years ago at Chelsea Guitars especially, the way you shipped an amp is you took each tube out and you put it in bubble wrap and you put a number on it. And everyone thought that was the way you did it, but 9 out of 10 times, people broke the tubes when they put them back in, put them back in wrong.
Yeah, put them in
and
the
that
wrong,
was the biggest.
Backwards.
Yeah, now we just ship them with the tubes in them, and there's never a problem. Worst comes to worst, one comes out, and you just put it back in.
And
I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I got the tube in wrong because I didn't think it could go in
well,
wrong because it's got a guide, but it did.
It does, and it shouldn't. But,
I fucked that amp up.
The manufacturer of that amplifier used rubberized tube sockets. You know, tube sockets are a little bit softer, which we do use, like a Michael X, to improve vibration and all this other stuff. But one of the drawbacks is
I got the tube in there wrong.
You got the tube in there wrong. So they'll kind
I thought if it slid in, it was in the right place because it's got a tube guide.
No.
So I didn't look to see if it was in the right place.
Because with the tube guide, it usually will slide in easier. So, it'll slide in anyway, but it's just...
Right. So that's why everyone's like, I don't even like to change tubes and amps, and I've been doing this for so long, but... Right. I thought that was recently I did that.
Yeah.
That was like 6 months ago. It wasn't like I did it 20 years ago and I've learned my lesson.
Yeah, exactly. And, tubes are on sockets for a reason. They're meant to be changed. And, they break and stuff happens. And I had a customer not that long ago that brought me an amplifier. It was an older Marshall. And I opened it up and I'm looking at it. It had all the original tubes in it. And he's like, man, I got this amp in 1988. It was my senior year of high school. My parents bought it for me. And I'm like, have you ever done anything to this amplifier? No.
No.
I never did anything to it. And it all of a sudden mysteriously just stopped working.
Right.
And I opened it up and like these tubes, there was like half of a cat worth of cat hair.
Yeah.
Around these tubes. I was like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, but there's... It all boils down to, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And
right. I just got an amp for a friend of mine bought it on eBay, and he just noticed that the guy was near me. It's an old Standell amp. So my friend just bought it because he got a good deal on it. Right. So I go and pick it up for him. And it's one of the big Standell. Oh, you saw it?
Yeah.
It's a big Standell amp. But the guy, I'm talking to the guy, and he's like, I was like, oh, how long have you had it? He's like, oh, I bought it new. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, I was in a band. And someone recommended this amp, and I played it for years, and then I put it away. And he's like, it worked up until recently. Oh, you didn't see it. Oh, you did?
No,
we were Adam looked at it.
Yeah, we were talking about it.
Adam looked at it, because all of a sudden it just stopped working.
Right.
And of course, Adam just did some stuff, and it started working again. He's like, oh, give it to Jamie, he needs a cap job.
Right, okay.
So but it's an old Standell. But he was the original owner. He's never did a thing to it.
Never done a thing to it.
And he toured with it back in the day.
Man, that's wild.
Yeah, and it's one of the solid state Standells.
Right.
Like I wasn't really hip to 215 JBLs.
Yeah.
It's not light.
Weighs a ton.
But cool amp, and
man.
Adam was in for a minute. It's Adam Grimm from Satellite Amps in San Diego, a buddy of ours. And he was only in for like a few hours, so I wasn't gonna have him rip this thing apart. Okay. But he was like, "Oh, just have Jamie recap it."
Sounds about right.
Let's go to lunch,
Yeah, those Standells are cool, man. You don't find many of them over here. In the United States, anyways, they were real big over in Europe, and
it was like wasn't Chet Atkins playing those?
Chet Atkins loved the Standell amplifiers, and there was a couple people. I mean,
Merle Travis, or
I'm not 100% sure.
Someone tell you, oh, that's the Merle Travis sound or something.
That could be.
Could be, who knows?
I think that Paul Bigsby was more of the Merle Travis sound than anything else, but we're all biased. It's like. Goes down to pickups.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about you, just so people can get an idea of who you are.
Okay.
So I met you at the New York Amp Show. Yeah. When that first started up, because I met a lot of people at those very early amp shows, because I just opened my business.
Right.
So I started going to that, and I met all the people I carried early on, or not all of them, but a lot of the people I met personally. A lot of them I met through the internet, but I remember I met you at the first one. Mm-hmm. And those big amp shows were really cool. I met Adam from Satellite the first time I went.
Right.
I met you. I met a whole bunch of cool people. And you had a Hammond organ in your room.
In my room. Yep.
And you were the first person who went to Dale's
Pale ale.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because you're like, you want a beer? I was like,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, you're like, you have one of these? I was like, no. And I came home, I'm like, I just found the best beer at the amp show.
Good old Dale's Pale Ale. Yeah, we that was the year we were giving candy out. We had
You were playing Hammond.
Yeah, we had
know.
jams going in the room. It was fantastic.
Those were fun shows.
It was
We
great.
got into it a bit on the podcast with Jeff before this about the New York Amp Show and the Brooklyn show.
The
But
guitar
the amp shows were really a cool thing.
Right.
You know, that, and now I guess they don't exist anymore
Well,
here.
he does it. Lonnie is doing it one day instead of the whole weekend that we used to do it and
Right.
everything. And you know, it's kind of tricky because I remember the not necessarily the the trail of destruction that we would leave, so to speak, but a lot of the other patrons that were in the hotel were not particularly fond.
Yeah, I always found
of
that
the amp
crazy.
shows.
There's like 3 floors of amplifier builders, and then there's like a family.
Yeah, and man, they were pissed off.
I'm sure,
And
but supposedly the hotels told them. But it was
Yeah.
it's a crazy concept, but it was
Yeah.
so much fun.
it was.
You know, and there were really cool people there.
Yeah,
you know,
it's great.
and
You know,
you'd
it's great
wander
to-
around. You know, but I just opened in certain circumstances. I met Adam from Satellite. That's how I met him. Is you know, I just loved his amps. They looked cool. You know, I was with Night Bob. You know, and I was like, "What amps sound great?" He's like, "These are really cool. Let's go talk to this fella." And it was Adam. So you start talking
there you
to
go.
him, and he's like, "I had just opened," and I was like, "Hey, I just opened like a place not far from here, and I worked in New York City." And he was like, "Oh, well, if you're not far, I'll bring you a bunch of amps tomorrow after the show." And I was like, "Really?"
Cool.
And he was like, "Yeah." So the next day he shows. I didn't think he would really show up. He shows up at my house, leaves me like 5 satellites and splits. I didn't get his phone number.
Wow. See, that's the thing.
And off he goes. And I was like, "Wow, that guy's really cool."
Yeah, Adam's the man.
Yeah.
That's where I met him. That's where I met you. That's where I met
He just
pretty
left all
much
these amps,
everybody.
and I'm like, "This is awesome!" Like, I really just started. I think I just got business cards.
Oh wow.
So like, he was just like, "Here's some amps," and
I got
guess it's
amps.
better than shipping them back to San Diego. But
Right.
but I was like, "This is great. These amps are awesome. I could sell these." It's kind of what my business became.
Right.
You know, where I was going to do vintage stuff, and then stuff like that kept happening. I kept meeting really cool people, and it just, like, because I was going to do vintage stuff, and then the vintage market already crashed.
Right.
I didn't have $1 million to go
Yeah.
do it with. That was the big missing X factor.
Right,
I was like,
you
how do
know.
people do these? Oh yeah, $1 million bucks. I don't
million
have
investors,
that.
yeah, no.
Yeah, nope.
That's the same problem I had, man. You know?
Everybody, well, not everybody.
Yeah, yeah, but it's like, I started out. I had a full-time job. Just,
Right, you just undercapitalized. Like, I had tons of experience.
Yeah.
Since I worked in a guitar shop my whole life and played music, I didn't have tons of money.
Right.
So-
Living in New York City. being
Yeah,
a
well, me
musician.
and my friend Craig kind of opened Mountain Cat. We got it started. We had 2 guitars and a broken amp. And we're like, this is the best place ever, because it was ours.
Yeah, because you were doing what you wanted to
Yeah,
do.
all we did
man,
like the
you
first
know?
couple of months is just make stupid graphics. Like
More logos. Hey,
yeah,
more
we're like,
logos.
yeah, this is awesome. With the 2 guitars and broken amp, I was like, fuck. I guess we're gonna have to push the envelope and get some more guitars in this
Right.
place.
Or at least one amp that works.
Yeah, because to be honest, I thought I could walk into a bank and get a loan back then.
Nope.
No, because the economy just
Shit the bed.
yeah.
Totally shit the
3
bed.
months earlier, I could have got $1 million or something. They wouldn't give me
Jack
$5,000 on a credit card that said Mountain Cat Guitars.
Dude, I had a hard enough time buying a house. It was like,
Yeah, forget that. At that
was
point.
ridiculous.
Yeah, so that was my problem. But I was lucky enough to have a lot of friends who had consignments, and the boutique thing really worked for me because people were willing to consign.
Right.
I had a lot of contacts in the music business. I just didn't have money to buy their gear, so people were willing to consign stuff. Like Adam left me those amps.
Right.
I went to work.
Right.
And then
you
I
go.
got
You
a
got
couple
something you
boutique
can sell.
guitar guys, and then as I would sell one of their things, I would use that as a deposit to buy a thing, and then that's how I got into the boutique thing and kept following it.
Right.
And then vintage still hasn't really come back quite the way it was, but I sell a lot of vintage stuff. But I don't go crazy on it because there's so many vintage dealers. And you can't push the price the way you used to.
Yeah.
So and there's too many guys who pay too much for shit. So
But the vintage market's weird now, man, because I noticed that there is what certain people will say things are worth.
I know.
What they're actually worth.
Everyone says they're worth 10 grand. I never get
It's like,
10
yeah,
grand
I
for
never
them.
saw 10 grand for
so what's
it.
wrong with me?
It's like it's going back to Hammond organs. It's like people are like, oh, well, this is a $6,000 Hammond P3. I'm like, how is it a $6,000 Hammond P3? It's like, I'll give you $3,500 for it. No Leslie. It's got bench and pedals.
Right.
That's cool and everything, but the finish is all dinged up. It's
Right.
the preamp needs to be recapped. The tone generator might need.
I know,
some work,
I
you
get
know,
that all
it's
the
like-
time,
It's
but-
the same thing with amplifiers where people will come to me and they'll see amplifiers that I have in my shop, like one of the amplifiers we did the demo for. That's a 66 Fender Concert.
Right.
People have a fucking cow when they see that I modified it.
Right.
And I'm like, why? Like, well, that's a 1966 Fender. I'm like, it's not even worth $1,000
It's a concert,
in
right?
mint shape.
It's an amazing amp.
It's a great amp.
But no, I've never gotten real money for a black concert.
No.
Brown concerts, maybe.
Different story.
But then again, you go to a guitar show and you see them for $600.
Right, but that's also a game of numbers.
Right.
There are far less brown and white
Right.
Fender amplifiers.
Right.
than
There's a
there are
lot of black
bass and silver.
concerts. They sound really good, but they don't have they don't have reverb.
Right.
You know, and most people aren't hip to them. Now they're just too big.
Right.
You know, I haven't sold an amp that size in a long time.
Yeah, people won't even buy super reverbs. I can't even get rid of super reverbs.
And supers used to be $2,500, Blackface
Shit
Super,
in the-
all day.
yeah, on toast. Bang.
I haven't sold a super reverb in years.
No.
You know, like, but they're amazing. Every time you plug into one, you're like, Jesus, it's the best amp.
They're
But no one
great.
wants to carry it anymore.
Nope. And that was that Bandmaster that I picked up from you, that
Right.
5005D. All that is a super reverb in a head, pretty
Right.
much.
It's a
you
perfect thing, and no one wanted that.
Nobody even wanted it. You can't sell those things for a couple $100.
Right. You could
And-
literally buy them for $200-$300. It would cost you $1,000 to buy the parts to build one.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
It's great, and they sound amazing. Listen to
great.
any 70s record. That's what they were using.
Oh yeah.
You know, look at Sly and the Family Stone's back line.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
all
All
silver
dual
face,
shows. Yep.
like
All
reverb
dual-
heads.
Yep.
You know, the Bandmaster reverb and the show reverb
reverb
head.
heads, yeah.
And every band had Fleetwood
And
Mac.
the Showman 215 JBL cabinets.
Yeah, forever.
Everywhere.
Yeah. And it looks so
Everywhere.
great.
And that's why I always love seeing bands like Mountain and stuff, man. The
Yeah.
first live stage shot that I saw, I mean, Felix Pappalardi was fantastic as a bass player, but as a record producer as well. We all know that. Rock and roll back then carried a significant amount of volume that's now lacking in these modern times.
It's not the same thing. Like, you would go to a concert and it was ear crushing,
Yeah.
which I'm sure a lot of people lost their hearing.
Felix Pappalardi lost his hearing.
Right.
Now, one could argue that Felix Pappalardi's loss of hearing is what made him such a great record producer. Because you listen to albums like Disraeli Gears, where it's perfect up the middle. The
Right.
mix on that is just perfect because he couldn't hear shit above, 6K and
Right.
no bass whatsoever.
Right, it's one of
because
those happy accidents of,
he was standing in front of 400 watts of some
Right.
2000S's and JBLs for
Right,
years.
look at the size of the shit they're standing. You see the picture of Clapton sitting there with a Firebird in front of 200-watt Marshalls with 4 cabinets on each side.
can't stand
with
in front
a
of one.
Firebird. I had that one in my shop. The 100-watt
100-watt,
Marshall.
the super bass,
I
I
turned
think.
it up hhalfway, hit one note, and every picture fell flying off the walls. That's like, holy fuck, guys used to stand in front of these
2 of them, 3 of them. Look at Band of Gypsies.
with a Firebird.
Yeah. Or a Strat.
like,
you got
yeah, a
balls.
Strat.
You got balls.
But they were like, yeah, sounds good.
yeah, sound reinforcement was different back then.
Yeah, it'd be
man.
fucking loud. But
Yeah.
that's why you went to a concert, you'd feel the bass.
Yeah.
It's SVTs, a few of them.
Yeah.
And you would feel the bass. It almost felt like it was interrupting your breathing. Like,
Right.
oh my God, I
SVTs
can't
plural.
breathe. Yeah.
Yeah,
You'd be
and-
like a kid at a concert and you felt like you couldn't breathe.
Yeah, and that's
Like,
gone nowadays.
But it was cool. Right now, people aren't using SVTs. They're using
well-
something else.
Pussies.
But, but it's all coming to the PA, and it all sounds great. Like, I remember seeing Van Halen at the Garden. I mean, the Garden had such wishy sound you couldn't hear, but they were my favorite band, and halfway into the song, you still couldn't tell what song it was.
Right.
Because all you were hearing was boom, 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 boom. It probably may have sounded better in other rooms, but
Garden's tough.
yeah, the Garden used to be terrible. Now it's better. It's so wide,
it's so
especially when you're
big.
seeing loud bands.
Yeah.
I saw Rainbow and those kind of bands. It was just
Jesus, that
it was
incredible.
it was just loud. Rainbow and the Scorpions at the Garden. We were in high school. That shit was loud, but
It sounds like
it was probably
Past
great. I was
80s, yeah.
young and wasted, so
Yeah, well,
I'm sure it was a good time.
oh, of course.
But so when did you start building amps? Or when did you start repairing them, really? Because you're really more of a repair guy than a builder.
Yeah, I do all kinds of weird stuff,
right.
man. Like, repairs fuel my builds.
Right.
I often tell people the amps that I build and have been building, there's no rocket science that's going on inside of anything. These are all techniques that have been around forever.
Right.
But they're techniques that I never would have learned unless I was doing a lot of repairs.
Right.
And unless I was taking in old weird amplifiers like Garnets and Standells and
Right.
magnetones and weird stuff that's just bizarre and not of the norm, not a Marshall, not a Fender.
Right.
And you learn all these great little techniques that you can apply to stuff that you wind up building. So I've been doing repairs since my parents will tell you stories of taking apart clocks that didn't work.
Right,
and fixing
you're one of
them when I
those
was a
people.
kid,
Right.
and
I was always telling these guys, I was like, with the audio stuff, you're one of those guys who could just fix anything. You're out and back, you're fixing your car. You could fix a septic tank in your house.
It's just it was a general electromechanical
fixing shit.
Yeah,
Right.
And I liked music gear.
So it was going to get taken apart.
Right, and I found out when I was way younger that, I always use Herbie Hancock Headhunters as an example. It's, one of my top 3 records of all time. And when you open that record up, and you look and you read the liner notes, it tells you every damn instrument everybody played, everything by name, Hohner clavinet, I guess he was on the Odyssey, and it's like all these other different synthesizers and string ensemble and all these weird things, and I was like, oh. And then as a kid, you try to point the sounds to the instrument. So enter the late 90s, early 2000s, when I could get a Hohner clavinet for $50 because it was fucked up, and nobody knew how to fix it. So I was like, well, shit, let me try this new internet thing. And this was back in the Usenet days, and here I am, a 13, 14-year-old kid trying to fix these old pieces of equipment, and people are like, you're going to kill yourself. What are you doing? Get the hell out of here.
It was like, it's dangerous.
Yeah, you have no idea. You can really kill yourself. So I taught myself how to not kill myself, and actually, to do the right maintenance techniques.
Yes, before the internet, we used to have amp guys at Chelsea, I worked at Chelsea Guitars for many years, pre-internet. So, we only knew certain things. Like, we had a fellow who fixed amps, but he just did it in his basement.
Right.
It was even hard to get parts.
Right.
It was so primitive. He was really good with Fenders and stuff like that. But, pre-internet, everything was so different. So you only knew things really because you hung out in a guitar shop all day and talked to other guys.
Through the grapevine.
Yeah, so most of the stuff you knew was secondhand information. And once the internet came out, it blew most of the knowledge out anyway. But you only knew certain. That's why, it comes up on every podcast because it's a natural thing. Before the internet, you only knew what you knew, and there were only a couple books even.
Well, no, not necessarily. There's still only a couple books that are worth anything.
Right now, there's a lot of books, but back then, even some of the books, I have the first Gibson, but one of the first Gibson books by this guy Ian Bishop. I still have it. And basic information isn't correct.
Right.
Like when they started making the gold top.
Yeah. Bullshit.
It's overall. I learned a lot. I learned what a P90 was. I learned, because it was 13. So so you learned, what a difference between a gold top and this was. But a lot of the real basic info wasn't correct.
Right.
But it was written in probably the early 80s, maybe even the 70s.
Well, there was back before the internet. What I used to do a lot of work. One of the guys that taught me a lot of the stuff that I know. His name was Rich Kerner from Time Electronics down in Union, New Jersey. Rich passed away last February, and he was the guy who really got me on the tube amp highway.
Right.
And he was the one who taught me that if you don't have a schematic, and Rich had bookshelves worth of schematic, everything you could ever imagine, that there was this stuff at the library that was called microfilm. And I remember going to the library, even in the early 2000s, before people would even dig some of this shit out, especially with stuff like Ampeg, because Ampeg was local in Jersey.
Right.
They were in Linden.
Right.
So a lot of that, we have a huge Ampeg population locally.
Right.
And there's still Ampegs that I'll get in, old Mercuries from the late 50s and stuff that don't match up to any schematic that I ever had.
Right. Well, they even say Fender stuff, the volume in the middle ones.
Right. And I had a Fender come in that was a silver face, and from what it was a deluxe reverb combo. It must have been the amplifier that Fender was building right when they ran out of all the parts that they used in the blackface.
Right.
Because half of it is the blue pills.
Right.
And then the other half is the blue.
People think these companies cared. And they didn't. It was like, oh, we're out of those. Use these.
The 1960s.
Like someday someone's gonna wonder.
Right. Yeah. No, they didn't.
They would not like that.
No. And
that's why everyone goes, oh, they didn't make that in '66. You'd be like, were you fucking there?
Yeah.
They would have made anything.
The 63 low-powered Harvard.
Right. Perfect example. You always read that there was a low-powered Harvard and a high-powered Harvard, but I never saw the low-powered Harvard. Even the high-powered Harvard was hard to find.
The other Sasquatch.
Right. And a friend of mine brings me what he said was a Tweed Princeton, and he was like, oh, it sounds pretty good, but it needs some work. You could have it, or I bought it off him, I forget. And then I gave it to Jamie, and it turns out to be the most sought-after amp in 1963, Tweed low-powered Harvard, which was basically they only put it out in '63 because they had leftover chassis. They still had some Tweed, I guess, which they'd stopped using. Well, they were probably done already, right? Yeah. And it was
63.
It was a Princeton chassis. They just put one power tube in it, and
flew the other side. It was It was a Princeton everything.
Right. That's
And-
why he thought it was at Princeton.
Yeah.
He didn't think anything of it. The name was all
Grounded the
worn
other-
out.
Yeah, they grounded the other half of the secondary on the output.
Right,
transformer,
and
so
that's
it
the
was a single
low
ended
power.
amp.
And then we looked on the internet. There were two other ones, 1963 Tweed amps. I've worked in the
That was
guitar
well into
business.
Brown.
I would have said there's no such thing as that.
That was past White and
Right.
almost at the end of Brown. That was at
Right.
the end of Brown because 64 was
Right.
Black.
So if anyone had told you I have a 63 Tweed amp, you'd be like, no, you fucking don't. They don't make that because I read it in a fucking book. But and I'd
Dude.
been in this business for a long time, and I never knew there was a 63 Tweed amp.
Yeah.
And it was
Me
only that
neither.
one thing. It was only the low-powered Tweed Harbor, and I guess that's why it is hard to find.
But I
'cause-
still find Tweed champs up to 62. They had a
Yeah,
62 Tweed
I've seen
champ.
those. But, and then there's the weird black one in the middle.
Yeah, I know.
Which is cool.
That's
It's a
the cool
63 supposedly,
Yeah.
but that one's cool.
That's the cool one.
Yeah, I always wanted one of those
The
just because
first
it's
black amp, the
black,
first black,
right?
yeah.
But yeah, you find I've seen 1962 Tweed Deluxes.
Sure. They just had parts. CBS
Right.
came in and was like, use all this, use all this.
Yeah,
Use
that's
all
why
this stuff
people
on
who
the
go
shelf.
like, oh, they didn't do this in that year. I read that on the internet. Why wouldn't they have? I knew guys, back in the day when I first started, the guy I worked for, Les, had said, and it is true you find, Carina V's with chrome parts in 64.
Yeah, I'd heard about that.
Because supposedly employees can make guitars.
Yeah.
They were told to make guitars. They just were told not to put Gibson on it. Wow. But all those guys supposedly were making guitars at home anyway.
Right.
The guys who were making the F5 mandolins were making them at home.
Right.
And they'd sell them to you. So later on, these guys all sold this shit.
Right.
So
you never know exactly what you're going to get.
Right. That's why everyone who claims to know everything, it's you can't.
And that's, what I was saying before about the repairs. And that's why I try to do so many repairs because
Right.
I don't know.
Because you're going to see different shit. Right. That's why some guy who goes to a school and 3 weeks later is working in a store on stuff can't get it right.
Can't get right. And
You know,
that's,
like-
there's shit that I will still open up and I'll be like,
What the fuck? Right.
I'll be damned.
But
I've never seen that
people bring
before.
me stuff all the time. I've been doing this a long time. Everyone, so we do it for a certain amount of time. Everyone thinks all this stuff, and I'm willing to admit here on our podcast that, and anyone who doesn't is full of shit because I
Right.
know all these guys.
That's the best part is learning new stuff every day. You're just like, I didn't
Literally
know
at
that.
Chelsea, you would learn something every single day, something big.
Right.
Because you were talking to guys who knew even so much more than you did. You talked to Richie Friedman, would stop in all the heavy hitter dudes, and you just listen. And every day you've learned something amazing. But I would still learn something almost every day. I'm not in vintage guitars as much as I used to be.
Right.
But they're not all the same, and they're not consistent. And supposedly if you walked into any of those companies, Gretcher, and you put a decent deposit, then they would build you
Anything you wanted.
I want that neck on that guitar with the pickups out of that thing. Okay, give me $50 deposit and come back next Tuesday. It was like that.
Yeah.
So anyone who's going, this can't be right.
You never know.
That's why it's so hard now. When you see so many guitars over the course of your time, and someone just walks in with a Strat, and there's so many people who build relic Strats, there's so many people who build replica things. The real thing now looks fake.
Right.
And the fake things look so real that you forget what the real things look like, and it all gets jumbled in your mind.
Right.
And we're getting older anyway. That you just look at it. And I went to another very reputable dealer recently with a neck. Someone just gave me a Stratocaster, 1960 Stratocaster neck in trade for a guitar. I take the neck and I go, you want to get a second opinion because it looks right to me, but I know a million guys who can make a neck look like this.
Right.
So I go to, and this guy's been doing it longer than I have. Like super long time, a super well respected guy, and I go, hey, is this neck right? And he looks at it, and he goes, I don't know. That's like me either. Yeah. So what do you do with that?
Right.
So and what he said was interesting, the way he does it, and it kind of makes sense. He goes, because he's got a serious shop, and he looks around, and he goes, I just try to find another thing like it and look really close and
Right.
see if they, look, the same. See if the decal really looks the same, because everyone knows, you can go on the internet and find out anything now.
Oh, yeah.
So you could
But
make...
you can also go on the internet and buy an exact spaghetti decal for a 66.
Right, which you
or
could
64
used to be
success
very
rate.
hard to do.
Right. Now
He used to
these
be the
guys
guy who
make-
came to the New York Guitar Show.
That made decals.
The old New York Guitar Show was from overseas, and he had the
books upon books.
and everyone would buy them all. And then we'd see him once a year, and as you were starting to run out, you call the other dealers and go, "You have any spaghetti logos?" Because people would start to run out, but you'd just buy everything he had.
Right.
You had national logos. He had super logos.
Like the real shit,
But
too.
before now, you can find anything.
Anything online.
You
You
know,
can get them on
but
Amazon.
back then everything was hard to find. I remember I used to have to call Fender itself when we wanted to do a restore guitar or something, and say I had a new Fender, and the decal's crumbling. Can you send me one? And they would send you one, but one. So like, you know, like
Now you don't even need that. You know, it's like
now just go on eBay.
it's companies like Fender, and it's the logo is the only thing that seems to have transferred over time.
Right.
You know, because Fender, even when CBS bought them, Fender changed drastically.
Right. But the logo is hard to. It was hard to replicate the way the logos worked for a long time. Now there's perfect. It was hard to replicate everything, but people didn't know what they know now.
Right.
Even your average guy, you can go on the internet. They get a lot of misinformation too.
Right.
But they have all the information they need for certain things. But that even like we didn't know in guitar shops.
Right.
You know, like when I first started working in Chelsea Guitar, I didn't really know much about vintage guitar. I knew I liked them.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And I knew a
but
lot
you didn't
about
know-
the ones that I knew about.
Right.
You know, but I didn't know about all the other ones.
Right.
You know, like I always tell the story. I think I told it on the last one even. Like I sold an ES-150, you know, the big fat 335 thing. You know, Sleepily Beef played one. I think he's the only famous person who ever played one. He's not that famous.
Right. I know the guitar.
But we used to get right 150D. They're cool, big
Right.
fat 155. But I remember the fellow. I'm selling it to the guy, and he goes, "Is there a center block?" And I didn't even know what a center block was. I was like, "Yeah." A 50-50 shot. Turns out I was wrong.
Wrong. Yeah.
He brings it back a couple days later, and he's like, "You said this guitar is a center block," and I was like, "I did." I said, "What now?"
Yeah, right.
You know, and so I go, and I told the guy that I worked for, I was like, "Hey, you know, I think I told this guy it has a center block, and it doesn't." And he was like, "Fuck him."
If you're spending that much money for a guitar and you don't know if it has a center block,
I was like,
or
"I'm
not,
really sorry." He's like, "Don't worry about it." I was like, "This is what a center block is here." This. That's how you learn shit.
Right, yeah.
I didn't know what
mess up,
a center block. I've been telling because when we used to buy 330s when we were kids, we didn't know center blocks or no center. We just knew they were cheaper.
Right.
You know, so we'd buy them, they'd feed back.
Yeah,
You're like,
you
"Oh
probably
man, this thing
4.5
sucks."
pounds. You're like,
Yeah, you're like, but they look cool.
Yeah.
And they were old. We thought they were 335s with other pickups.
Right. No.
We didn't-
Not even close.
yeah, so we didn't know any of that.
Yeah,
so.
but you know, that's like there's still stuff that I don't know, man. You know?
Right, exactly. It's still even very basic stuff. And you're like, "Oh shit!" I think you even forget stuff. You know, you're like, "Oh, I used to know that."
Right.
You know, like,
Yeah.
you know, it used to be so. You know, because when you're in it every day, like Chelsea Guitars, I was there all day, every
Every
day,
day.
talking to dudes like who knew so much shit. So, you know, and you would just sit there and you would like be like a sponge,
Right.
and you were seeing stuff every day.
Oh, yeah, like tangible.
You're literally taking it apart.
Right.
You know, to like, you know, and what was funny though, even about that, there was a period where people were bringing their. It's funny how it moves. When the internet came out, customers were bringing their own screwdrivers.
All right, you're serious?
Swear to God.
Okay.
So like, you know, and they would be like, "Do you mind if I take this apart?" I'd be like, "Fuck yeah! Are you a guitar tech?
Yeah.
That's a $10,000 guitar."
Yeah, no, you can't
I
take it
do
apart.
not. But that was really happening, where everyone wanted to take everything apart to see if it was. We were like, I was like, my tech might take
Yeah.
it apart.
You are
for
not taking the
but you're
pickups out
not
of its
taking the
1958
yeah. Or you
Les
would just see a guy with a screwdriver starting to do
Get the fuck
things. You'd
out.
be like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah.
You know, and
No.
but you know, like you would see the crazy because people want to know. I mean, it's understandable, but I wouldn't take a screwdriver to somebody else's $10,000 guitar.
no.
You know, and that was happening. You know, like before. You know, like, and I'd be like, "Well, the tech will open it," but it's not even like they would know what they were looking
at
for.
anyways.
It's like when people like look down the neck this way, they'll like do this, and I'd be like, you know.
What-
What is it? Are you looking to see if it's perfectly straight? Because you know it's not supposed to be, right? They're like, "I just want to see if it's straight." I'm like, does it look straight?
Yeah.
Like,
You obviously know
I would
what
do
the
it too.
fuck you're
I'd be
talking
like,
about.
"Oh,
Yeah.
looks good to me." I don't really. I mean, I guess if you're looking for a giant hump and you
Yeah, if you're
see
looking for
one,
a giant hump, but for me, that was always. It's
that's
like,
always like.
If I look down a guitar like that, it's more to see what the fret dressing looks like than anything.
Right, but that's how they were looking at that because you'd see so many people do it.
Well,
and
this
you'd be
one's got a
I'd be like,
different-
"Do you know
it's
what
like-
you're looking for?" And they're like, "No, I'm just
Called
doing
relief,
this."
You douche.
Right,
It's supposed to be there.
I just want to look like I'm
Yeah.
knowing stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, so,
Yeah.
as far as your amps go, so let's talk about that a bit.
Sure.
So you don't really have a line of amplifiers.
No, sir, I do not.
Which most amp builders do.
Right. Because I don't build in large quantities. As you had said, I'm more on the restoration and repair side.
Right.
But every once in a while, I do get a call for a custom amplifier, and all the amps that I build are all one-offs. You know, there's no line of amps. There's no.
So I want the GR5000.
Yeah,
Know
it doesn't
that.
exist. Doesn't
Right.
exist. And usually when players will come to me, they'll be like, "Look, man, I've had a Fender, they're too farty. I've had a Marshall, they're too much gain.
Right.
You know, the Vox is the frequency range that I'm looking for, but it's not loud enough."
Right. They'll be my perfect dream amp.
Exactly. And that's where I come in. So,
Right, that's very cool. Because a lot of guys have like models. That's obviously Marshall. That's obviously Fender. That's
Right.
obviously that.
So it's your version of a Plexi. Okay, I get it. That's your version of a Bluesbreaker. I get it. You know, like, and there's so many guys building amps. There's so many guys building good amps.
Sure,
That,
absolutely.
you know, how do you pick then? You know,
That was one of the main reasons that I didn't want to go into production, because guys like Adam from Satellite Amplifiers, guys like Andy from Fuchs Amplifiers,
all great stuff, all great guys,
fantastic, great guys, great companies, great equipment.
How do you pick?
How do I pick? And then,
I know that becomes well. I find like there's a lot of say guys who make a 5E3 amp.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that.
Sure.
You know, Adams amps are different. You know, like
they're original circuits.
yeah, and Adams. That's what when we first saw them. I was like, that amp has 2 knobs. I'm there.
I like that. You know,
there's one more knob than I need. But
right, exactly. And you know, there's a customer brought in an amp that's in the shop right now that I'm just finishing up. It's a 1948 Gibson GA10, I believe.
Isn't the Les Paul Jr. thing or?
No, it's different. I'll send you a picture of it. It's a really cool amp. It's got these wooden struts up the front of it. And
I've seen that.
This is the most badass rock and roll amplifier. When you plug into the mic input, one knob. One knob.
Right, I only need the
like,
one knob. Right. The tone, I just put the tone of it. But a lot of guys do a lot of cool shit with a lot of knobs. You know, like I can't use pedal boards. That's just not me. But you know, but in some really good gear, I find you don't need. Like even we just did a demo video for your amp, which is on our YouTube station, probably right after this one. But I plugged a Cardinal guitar into it, which is Cardinal Instruments, Sam Evans in Austin, Texas, and I just hit something I probably hit every day. And it just sounded so good right off the bat. I was like, wow, that I could just write a song right
there. And a riff just came
with
out
this guitar sound, right? You know, this you should just put a microphone on it and we'll make an album. Right fucking here now. Because it sounds so good. And there's no pedal.
No pedals.
It was just a cable.
Right.
Great guitar into a great amp. All things were built properly. It's just it's almost like you can't hit bad notes.
Well, that was, this amplifier is a perfect example because this is an amplifier that you commissioned me to build.
Right.
And you were like, you know my style, you know the kind of guitars I like, you know the amps that I have right now. I need something just a little bit more than that.
Right.
And there we go.
Can we pan around to that, Daniel? Sorry to catch you by surprise. That's Daniel Ferry, our cameraman and buddy. But it's that amp right there. And we just did a demo video for it. But we can play through. We have a guitar plugged into it right now. Yes, that amp sounds really awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet, right?
So it's basically like a Fender with a lot. Well, it's 50 watts, right?
Yeah, it's 50 watts. It's really not very similar to a Fender at all, actually, which is great.
But it's nice and loud and clean.
Nice and loud and clean.
Which to me sounds like a Fender.
Right. Well, it's interesting because I usually group Fenders in with a pretty ballsy rock tone, but it depends on the Fender. It's,
right, like people want Tweed Deluxes from the 50s because they want that growly
they
thing.
want that crunch.
But if you want like a 60s, Deluxe reverb, to me they're clean amps.
A little cleaner.
Their crunch isn't so great.
It's not so great, but they're not enough power. But this amp's 50 watts. Has a reverb circuit that I developed
Yeah, that reverb was
for
good.
a bunch of years. Thank you. It's a bunch of mixtures of different techniques from different stuff that I picked up over the years, and so it doesn't get surfy, it doesn't get too muddy or anything. And it's the 2-knob circuit, so it has a dwell and a level.
Right, I love that.
Yeah, the dwell is how hard your signal will hit the reverb tank, and the level is how much the tank is re-amplified through the amplifier. And that amp's also got my tremolo circuit in it too,
Right, which is the best.
That's
It's
super great. That is probably the closest thing to a Fender out of anything else that's inside of the amplifier. That's almost note for note lifted out of a 5F11 Vibrolux. So little couple tweaks here and there, everything else like that. But for the most part, it's just single.
What's the most common thing people ask you to build, or is it all different? People ask you to build Marshally type things,
I get that. I get the Vox stuff, so it's got chime. This circuit and modifications of this circuit are definitely one of the more popular things that I'll build.
Would you build 100-watt things?
I build
Doesn't Neil
100
Casale
watt.
have 100 watt?
Yeah, Neil's got 100 watt, which is very similar to this amp. That's just got the reverb though and no trem on it. Adam Smirnoff Schmeens from Lettuce has 130 watt one with 2 JBLs.
Well, those guys probably need it.
Yeah, well, Schmeens wanted it because he wanted the ultimate funk amplifier.
Right.
He plays
Wants
an
to
R8.
play super clean.
Yeah, with an R8.
Super loud.
Right, super clean, super loud. So
Right.
JBLs and 130 watts.
Watts will do it.
It'll probably do it.
Then you're in
So-
like Jerry territory.
Yeah, it's pretty serious. I just sent, I do preamps as well, speaking of which. I just sent a preamp to Zach Nugent from Melvin Seals and Jerry Garcia Band. So
Right.
he's currently running that through its paces. So we got, all kinds of different stuff. I build a lot of bass gear too. A
that's
lot
right.
of bass gear.
Yeah, you're big in the bass world.
Yeah, keyboards and bass was always my thing. So I just put the finishing touches last week on a 250 watt all tube bass amp.
Oh, you told me about that.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's it'll knock your teeth out. It's
sure.
It's serious. It was really done more as an ode to the late '60s, just sheer power and air volume.
Right.
It does Mountain, it does Jack Bruce, it does pretty much anything out of that time period.
Right.
Really loud.
And those old acoustic amps.
Yeah.
Sun.
Yeah, the Sun stuff, exactly. But I
It's
also,
so funny because that stuff you can get for like nothing.
Pennies.
You know, like no one, Sun and Earth and
Yeah.
Coliseum.
Yeah, the Sun Coliseums. There's a guy right now on one of the Facebook gear thing groups, gear, and he's got a really nice 360 and 361 acoustic, like the John Paul Jones bass,
Right.
for like $1,200.
Right.
I'm like, are you
sound
kidding
just
me?
like John Paul Jones.
Just like John Paul Jones. I restored one of those a couple months ago, and they're 200 watts, and it's an 18-inch speaker.
How many did he use?
3 or 4?
Right, yeah,
Depending on the
they
gig.
must have been loud.
Oh, yeah. And it's a single 18-inch speaker that's in a folded cabinet, which means that the speaker faces backwards.
Right.
And the inside of the cabinet is
Oh,
all...
that's it. So it all shoots out this way.
Yeah.
I never quite understood that.
Yeah, well...
Does an acoustic have that also?
This is the acoustic. This
Oh,
is
right.
The
Now, which is
360,
the one
right?
that Albert King used for guitar?
That was... He also used acoustics.
Because
but
that was a
those are-
backwards-facing speaker too, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
there was a couple of them that he used, but I mean, it depended on the speaker because they did a lot of different stuff where the cabinets would look the same.
Right.
And once you took the grills off,
That's
you
what
could see
always
that they were
confused me.
different.
They all look the
Yeah.
same to me.
Like the
Yeah.
215 and the single 18 folded look identical.
Look the same, right.
But
I never
they're
knew there
different.
was an 18.
Yeah, that's like.
And that's the
one.
John Paul Jones
That's
thing?
the John Paul Jones one.
No
Yeah,
wonder they
and
say
the
that
Bobby
there's
Vega
that one
and-
record, like if you listen to it on headphones, you could hear his cabinets creaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's got an 18-inch speaker.
Speaker, yeah. But you plug into this thing and it's the intro to Dazed and Confused just immediately.
Yeah, boom, boom.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
thumpy, kind of rumbly almost.
Right.
And I restored this amplifier and it was great. It sounded awesome. And I'm standing in front of it and I'm playing it and I got this thing turned up and I'm like, I feel like this should be louder. My buddy walks in the room. He's like, dude, you're making me sick. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So this thing, 15 feet away,
Right.
was almost double the volume.
Right. Those things were made to throw.
Holy shit.
Because
So-
they weren't made for your bedroom.
No, definitely not.
They're made for the guy out there.
Right.
You know?
And, I love that kind of stuff. I always did. And there was, this certain fear of God that these old rigs would put in you that I just can't get out of plugging into.
Right. Like Marshall Major. You know,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
We used to get those at Chelsea. Like Marshall Majors would come through and be like, we got to turn it on, right? Like, we just got to see how just how loud it
And
is.
blistering.
And we'd hit
just-
2 notes and the hotel above us didn't complain that often.
Yeah, they would complain.
The one time they complained, our friend Yule was playing to a Marshall Major, and they came right in. They were like, "There's people on like the 18th floor."
That are complaining. Wow.
You know, I don't remember how, but like they were like, people are complaining, but they're really way up there.
Yeah. It's like, all right.
Yeah, because we, no one, they didn't say much what his volume was, and like, but a Marshall Majors
They were.
couldn't get up there.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Then they were probably just like, wow, we can't even talking.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you have Blackmore use like 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah. But they were so crazy loud.
Yeah.
So his
I'm
hearing's
restoring
got
one
to be
right
damaged.
now. So
Like,
I got one on the bench right now.
I had this one crazy customer who collected them. Like, I think I don't know what he did with them.
What the hell can you do with them? You
Yeah.
can barely fucking lift them.
But they look so cool.
Yeah,
Because
they
they're just gigantic Marshalls.
Yeah.
Like, they're much bigger.
Yeah, they're way deeper.
Yeah. That's a
they're-
big
Yeah,
amplifier.
they're beautiful, and it's like, they were like, Ken Brand at the time was like, he was like a cowboy in my honest opinion. I mean, you got companies like Sun and all these other, people that are designing these circuits that had all this power and just tremendous amounts of current
Right.
flying around inside of these amplifiers.
Yeah, people must have got hurt repairing them. I assume.
I would hope not, but
Isn't an SVT, someone told me an SVT is the only amp that has enough current to kill you?
No.
Is that not true?
Champ will kill you if you hit it right.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so that's all wives' tale?
Yeah.
That was some of you heard in guitar, like, SVT is the only amp that can actually kill you.
No, 6 milliamps across your heart will kill you.
Ah, so anything can kill you.
Yeah, so if you're holding the chassis with your left hand and you get 40, 50 milliamps, if you had enough salt that day and your body is just a little bit more solid, the solidity's up, then yeah.
But didn't the singer in the Yardbirds die that way?
Keith Rolfe, he did. He did. I think it was from an improperly grounded microphone.
Right, or so, yeah, he got it from microphone.
Yeah,
I think he got
dropped him on the
shot.
stage. Yeah,
right.
dropped him dead on stage. And it can kill you, man. People don't understand. It's
Yeah.
like, there was an amplifier that was made, Kay made this amplifier called the 604. Little tiny fucking thing from, probably late 50s, early 60s. I don't really recall when. But it's nicknamed the Widowmaker because the amplifier had no power transformer in it. It used tubes that were heated from 120 volts AC, and it buffered the 120 volts out of the wall and rectified it to give you your DC voltage. So you had a direct connection from the ground of your guitar
To the outlet.
to the outlet.
Oh, shit.
And
And if you touch the wrong thing.
you're dead. And these are
Wow.
tiny little fucking things.
Oh, so it's not a big amp can kill you and a small amp can't.
It's I mean, because there's been times where I've gotten bit. I've been doing this for a long time, man. I follow all kinds of safety procedures, discharging caps.
Right, well, that, right.
But sometimes you get capacitors where it's like, we have these big electrolytics that we call can caps. You'll see them hanging from underneath amplifiers.
Right.
Certain ones, they look like big soda cans.
Right.
And they're usually multi-section electrolytic capacitors, which means that there's 3 or 4 capacitors inside of this.
Right.
And they're all grounded via a little spot weld on the inside of this can to the can. So when the can mounts to the chassis, the capacitor is grounded. I was working on a V4 Ampeg, and I discharged all the caps. I got a little bit of it out there, but the problem that we were having with the amplifier, unbeknownst to me at the time, was that this spot weld inside of this can cap had broken. And I was just going to recap the amplifier anyway, so I took all the voltage out of it and everything else like that. And man, did I get bit when I was wiggling that can cap out of there.
Oh, you're holding it.
Yeah, I was wiggling it out of there, and I had my hand on the other side of the chassis.
Oh,
It
shit.
knocked my ass out cold.
Well, it
And-
used to happen mostly like to people like who players, like, you would touch the microphone thing.
Yeah, blood
Yeah.
across stage in the
Yeah,
right
Bob
conditions,
Weir
man.
supposedly at Woodstock
almost died.
got a black lip. It supposedly threw him across the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and I guess kept playing, but it's supposed to give him a black lip.
Yeah.
Like a
A bloody lip will split you right open.
Yeah.
It's bad news, man. And I had a burn on my right hand, so bad, and I was pushing on the chassis with my left hand, with my left thumb, right, and it hit me so hard that my finger, like my fingerprint area on my left thumb, was numb for a week and a half afterwards.
Whoa.
And that wasn't even the side that I got hit on.
Right.
You
Every
know?
amp builder probably has that story somewhere.
Shit happens, man.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things that you're dealing with 300 plus volts.
Yeah,
a
imagine the
couple
olden
hundred
days. Guys
milliamps.
are like running around, the South in vans filled with this shit, pulling into a high school auditorium. No tech. It's raining.
Two-prong outlets all over the place.
It's amazing more people weren't
It's like
killed
the
that
Wild
way.
West.
Yeah, with
essentially,
100-watt Marshalls.
Yeah.
The Allman Brothers are running around with all this gear.
Yeah.
Playing in like a college auditorium.
Right.
That was built for like the basketball team.
It's
And there's probably like just outlets in the wall.
Yeah.
They
Showing
probably
up-
got good at it.
Right.
Supposedly their crew was really good and they had it all together, or they probably had realized when there was problems, but they must have got shocked all the time.
Right, but I mean, you look at groups like the Dead, and the Dead carried around everything.
Right.
Made them go broke. Know,
Yeah.
their entire crew and everything, and they still had problems.
Yeah. I was in tons of Dead shows where the left side would go out.
Yep.
They'd be like, we're going to take a short break, we'll fit that.
Yeah.
Because they were always playing with new stuff anyway.
Yep.
If they just used the same stuff for years and years, they probably wouldn't have happened, but they were always trying new stuff. And they would come out, hit 2 notes, and the whole entire left side would go down.
Yeah.
Be like, fuck.
Fuck. Well, I heard this, I think I read it in a book called Playing in the Band, and the first Wall of Sound gig, they set everything up. And the first note, of the first song,
It all
all
blows.
the tweeters blow out, and they just had no high frequencies.
It
for
happened
the
on a
rest of
Rolling
the show.
Stones tour, like in the 80s, one of those massive tours my friend went to. It was the first show in Philadelphia. They came out, hit the first 2 notes, the entire thing went dead. They had to go off like an hour.
Wow.
Like the band left the stage, but it was a long time
Wow.
before they could get it going
It's
again.
like, oh, shit.
The first, like, okay, our tour is starting.
Yeah.
But that shit happens. Like you test it. It's
It
like
happens to me.
anything else. It's like that thing where you like you repair an amp for a guy, and then he comes and picks up and he gets home. He's like, a year later you get a call from the guy.
Yeah.
I only played through this amp twice, but it's not working now.
but that was a year ago, no?
Yeah.
Like,
Where were you all
yeah,
year?
but I wasn't using it, so.
What happened in that year?
Yeah, or then you get the thing where like the amp's humming, and you're like, okay, bring it back to my place, plug it in, it's not humming.
Right. Happens all the time.
Right, then they go home, it's humming.
Right.
They're like, no, it's still humming, then bring it back to your place, it's
not
not humming.
humming.
They're always like, oh, well, every time I bring it here, it doesn't hum. I was like, there's a reason why it
for
doesn't
that.
hum here.
Yeah,
It's like,
something's-
take my cable to your house.
Yeah, and try that. Well, I had
Or,
a...
I was like, did you try 2 different guitars? No.
Yeah, well, there you go. Or problems with the pedal board. That's the other big thing.
Yeah,
there's something wrong
I
with
don't
the
deal
amp.
with that much, but geez,
Yeah.
you know, when I worked in the city, the second store I worked at, we did a lot of pedal board stuff. I didn't even get involved,
Fuck
so I'm not
that
great with
shit.
pedals. And look at all that shit, I can't even.
I don't even fucking know. Just
It
get
gives me an
away.
anxiety attack just to see someone
Yeah.
using it. You know, like, but you know, people can deal with that. You know, people get, you know, custom rigs, but I don't see how you tour with that, and you're getting a little humming noise from that. How
And
do you
that's
figure
the
out where the
thing.
humming noise is coming from?
But I get these calls from customers who'll be like, bro, there's something wrong with the amp. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, it's humming like a bastard. And I'm like, okay. And they bring it by, it doesn't hum. And I'm like, go get your rig. And they
Right.
go and they get their pedal
you have to
board.
go and bring the whole thing to your
Yeah.
house, right?
And then they plug in their pedal board. It's like,
Wasn't the one thing the guy had the wrong size jack on his guitar? Didn't that happen to you?
yeah.
And the
Yep.
cable doesn't quite
Quite fit
fit.
in there.
Didn't he call you in the middle of the night or something?
Yes, he did.
From a gig.
Yeah, well, no, he got his guitar back at a gig. He was like, something's going on here, all this other stuff. And it turned out he was using like this shit. So this guy had like a $3,500 guitar and a $3,000 amp and the fucking Millennium Falcon worth of pedals on the floor. And he's using, you know, $10 stag cables from like...
From the former Yugoslavia.
Right, like, what are you doing? And you try to explain to people that a 1/4 inch, especially in 1/4 inch jacks, really isn't a 1/4 inch. It's just a kind of roundabout term.
Right.
But there's some companies that will take that to heart, and they will make a 1/4 inch jack, and not figuring out that pretty much every, like with the exception of like 2, like Switchcraft and Amphenol, that everything else is made in other countries that don't use the fucking standardized system
Right.
of measurement that we use in the United States. They use a metric system. That a 1/4 inch is not a 1/4 inch.
Right.
So there's lots of great companies out there that are making jacks that have crimps in them. So
Right. Well, all that technology's come such a long way.
Right,
Like, you know,
you
look
know.
at Led Zeppelin. Like, you know, I watched something from like 1975. They're playing like Earl's Court or something, like 100,000 people there. And Jimmy Page is using that capo that we used to get
Yeah.
in guitar cases in the 60s.
Yeah.
That piece of plastic with the like
like the little strap over it.
that
It's like,
came- and those would always pop off by themselves.
yep. Somehow they never did for him.
That's all they had.
Yeah.
So like you're like, oh my god, they used those, and they barely work.
Yeah. It's
You
amazing.
know, like, and at that point he had like the pickup in his Martin was like just taped to the guitar,
Yeah.
and he had that capo, and it's Led Zeppelin,
yeah. And you're like
the best thing you've
fuck.
ever heard in your life.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's
Like how? Then that capo like. Pull it all the way
piece of
around,
crap, yeah.
and you'd be playing, and it would just go poing. And there he is playing. I'm sure it happened at some gig of his,
Right.
but he, you know, like,
I'm sure, but not at Earl's Court.
but not in front of. Even if it did, he would have been so cool. He would have been like, oh,
whatever.
I'm Jimmy Page.
Yeah. What are you gonna
Yeah,
fucking do about
I'm
it?
cooler than you regardless, even if my thing goes boom. You know, but you know, like it's amazing what you know, all that stuff has come such a long way, but still everything you go on stage, everything's gonna go wrong.
Right. Absolutely.
That's what people don't realize. You know,
Yeah,
like no matter
there's-
what you do, everything's gonna go wrong.
yeah.
And
There's a
that's-
law of averages that you kind of have to.
Well, tube gear especially is spooky old technology. That,
Yeah. Even new technology. I mean,
Right.
a tube
What
is
uses
kind of a
tubes
spooky
now?
thing.
Like everything used tubes back in the day. People understood what a tube was. Your TV
Right.
had them.
Right.
You know, people roughly understood what they did. You know, now no one even knows what tubes
Right.
are.
Unless you're into hi-fi or you're into guitar.
Right. Which are the two things I'm into.
Right.
But
or
like,
recording because they have the tube.
right, if you're
preamps
into
and
music
shit,
stuff.
yeah.
But other people are like tubes. That was
Still
isn't that
a
from the
thing.
50s?
Yeah.
Like my grandfather's TV had that,
Right.
right? Like you know, like no, our whole business is based on it.
Right,
You know, like,
exactly.
this spooky old technology. So you know, stuff can go wrong. That's why you're like, oh, I got my amp back. It's making this little buzzing noise. I'm like, or you know, I turn it up really loud and it's making a humming noise. I'm like, it's because it's an amplifier. With a single coil, like
Yeah.
you know, this guitar is from
Yeah.
1954.
Yeah,
You know,
and
they
it
didn't care
hums.
about things that hummed.
No.
You know, later on they made a humbucker.
Right.
But then it didn't sound as good.
Right,
You
exactly.
know, so like,
And that was always my thing with, you know, with the legends of stuff. It's like, do you really think that in 1958 Gibson was sending out scouts to find the most delicious mahogany that they could
Right.
possibly do in the maple to build these
well, we were
tops out
talking
of?
about that with pickups, like you know, the PAF and the. But you know, the guys who made the PFs were really just guys going to a job.
Yeah, that was
They
their
weren't
job.
like, we're going to make a pickup that years from now people are going to wonder about how we made it.
They
were
made a
just
pickup to shut the fuck up, to
yeah,
be
we're
quiet.
just,
There
when's
was no-
5 o'clock?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and you know, and that's our thing with PAFs or Sasquatch. We decided one day, because all we do is talk about PAFs. I've been talking about them forever. And then we finally realized that the PAF is the same thing as a Sasquatch. Some people think there's a Sasquatch. Some people think there isn't a Sasquatch.
Some people have seen
Some
it.
people have seen Sasquatch. Some people have seen things they think are Sasquatch. But they turned out to be a dog. A big dog,
Yeah.
nonetheless, but
Really
a dog.
hairy
So a
dude.
PAF is, half the people who are talking about PAFs don't know exactly what they're referring to.
And that's always what
But
it
they go,
was.
oh, my guitar's PAFs. I go, oh, cool. How much did they cost you? $150. Like, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I bought them new. In 1956?
56? Yeah, 56, yeah,
No.
no.
Oh, but that is called a PAF.
Right.
So like people,
But a PAF has been adapted to that humbucker pickup design.
Right.
The counterwound second coil right in front of it, and
right,
with
and
the chrome
people
cover.
have, like talked about it for so many years now. And we talked about it in the last podcast, you know, PAFs, and it's almost a thing in the guitar business.
Right.
Burst podcast, you know, bursts.
Sure,
and
it
PAFs
happens.
are like the holy grail. It's like the thing that people talk about, like, oh, well, you know. And even when I was at Chelsea Guitars, I remember before I really knew that much about PAFs, I was buying all the new pickups, and I'd buy them, and I'd go to Danny, like at Chelsea, and be like, oh, this sounds just like a real PAF, and he'd be like,
It doesn't.
it's nice sounding, but it doesn't sound like a real PAF. And I'd be like, oh, well, he doesn't, you know, he just is jealous or whatever, my new pickup or something. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But he would always say that. He'd be like, oh, that's a good sounding pickup, but it doesn't sound like a PAF, because he'd heard so many of them.
Right.
Because he'd been a dealer 15 years before that, when every guitar that came in had them.
Right.
So they were so familiar with them. And then once I started really getting PAF guitars, and I have 2 sets of PAFs now, so at least I could talk about my 2 sets of PAFs.
Right.
You know, like they do a certain thing. And I said this on the last podcast too, but it's so what our business is based on, these couple of things.
Right.
You know, PAFs, bursts.
Right.
52 tellies, you know,
Right.
and the myths behind them and why do they sound better. And probably on every podcast we'll discuss it. If you're discussing vintage gear,
You have
eventually
to
you're going to get
touch
to
on
why
that.
does a PAF sound the way it sounds. And no one fucking knows.
Right.
Is it? And I say that every time. Like, you don't need to talk about it for now. We don't know. We could talk about it for now. There's a lot of theories.
Sure.
And they all sound good. But the thing always is if you can look at one and you know how it was built, how come you can't build one that sounds just like that?
Well,
Or
think-
can you?
I don't see, but my thing
Right, so you're an actual builder of things.
of things.
So which gives you a hold that you can make a pickup.
I could make a pickup. I prefer uncovered humbuckers. I like the open coils. I feel like they have a little bit more upper mid-range sing to them.
Well, that's why everyone pulled them off.
That's why
you
everybody
know.
pulled them off, and that's I'll never forget seeing that first picture that I saw with Jimmy Page with that black and white humbucker in that
Right.
page, and I was like, ooh.
But then they say, you know, I was talking to Jason Lawler because I got a set of PAFs and they had no covers. And I was a big Lawler dealer at the time at the guitar shop I was working at. So I said, hey, you know, I just got these PAFs. They have no covers. He's like, put covers on them. And I'm like, why? He's like, every single one I have to rewind is because someone was
uncovered.
playing them without covers. It's like, they may sound better.
Yeah, but
you don't have to hit them all that hard to break them.
Yeah, no, not at all.
You
And
know-
that's really kind of any pickup. But I mean, Doug, at this point, I've been through so many different pickups in a Gibson guitar on the market. I've been through, Lawlers. I've been through. I haven't tried the Peter Florences yet. I got to try those.
Love Peter's pickups.
I've heard great things. Chuck Hammers told me great things about Peter's.
Yeah, I
pickups.
love Peter's a great guy.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I got to get a set, and I've been through all these different ones that are the new PAF sound. And
Yeah, there's so many of them, and they all sound good.
They sound great, but for that thing that I hear when I listen to Zeppelin 3, Houses of the Holy, and you listen to the stuff, Song Remains the Same, and all that, you hear this certain bite that
Right.
was in Page's guitar tone. And it's not glassy. There's tons of treble in it, but it doesn't
Right.
swish on
Right.
the top end.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing.
And somebody was like, dude, just go get a Super 2. Go get a DiMarzio Super 2. And I was like, that's like the cheapest pickup on the market.
Right.
What are you talking about?
We used to throw those in the garbage.
I-
I know. We used to pull them out. These suck. They're from metal. You literally throw them in the garbage at
Right.
Chelsea. Like they were worth $5.
Right, and that's
no one would ever buy one. Off
nobody
you.
would ever buy them.
And then you started hearing them now. You're like, oh,
these
they sound
pickups
really
smoke
good.
to the point where Garcia had them in all of his
Right.
guitars.
Everyone did in the '70s.
Yeah. So and then I started really kind of realizing that wow. So at the time frame that Super, or the original Super Distortion, and then the Super 2s came out, DiMarzio had probably had his hands throughout the 80s in the 70s and the 80s and stuff like that on how many PAF pickups.
Right. And had reverse engineered them and did all this stuff.
Was it a reverse engineering, or was it what we were talking about, like with Adam Grimm's amplifiers, where
Right.
it's just the simplest answer is usually the correct one?
Right, it's a simple thing to make a pickup. We
Sure.
talked about this the last time. You know, like you look at it, it's like if I was a guy who could make shit, this looks like a magnet with a bunch of copper wrapped around it.
Right.
Inside a thing,
Same
inside of
thing
another
with
thing. I don't want
Transformers.
to,
Yeah.
shit on amp build pickup makers because
Yeah,
it's
no,
hard.
Dude, but I
it
can't
doesn't-
do it. I've tried winding pickups 100 times, and they fucking suck every single time.
Well,
You
it's
know,
funny
that's why I
'cause-
let them do it.
Right, like I'm sure you get good at it, and there's ways to make them better, and some guys pick up sound better than others, and they all sound a little different, all that, but like
Finesse,
but
minutiae.
yeah, but a lot of our business is built on, like mythology, which a lot of it turns out to be incorrect.
Yeah, myth
later.
and legacy.
You
But
know,
like the PAF thing for me is, like you said, the Fender thing.
Right.
Like how many different models of Fenders were there over the years?
Right.
Even to this day.
and
which-
there's so many good Fender models.
Right, and you hear Fender, and you automatically, even the listeners of this podcast, when I say the term Fender, they have a tone in their head.
Right, and some people it's the Tweed Deluxe, some people it's a reverb amp, some people hate you hate the reverb amp.
I fucking hate them. So when you
That's
talk
what you-
about PAF, to me, I hear sleepy time.
Right.
That's what I hear, and I hear Page, but I don't hear Peter Green.
Right, or Paul Kossoff.
Paul Kossoff.
Or those guys Michael Bloomfield, who did all these things with PAF.
PAFs that were completely
Completely
out of
different,
the box.
right.
So it's like black pepper. How many different types of black pepper can
Right,
you
that's the
get?
thing. There's lots of different kinds of tea.
Right,
You know, so like-
exactly. Black tea, that's a generalization.
Right,
There's
it's-
freaking 80 million different types.
Right.
Ceylon is it? You know, it's a flavor, man, and I encourage my customers to do the same thing. I want to find what works for them, because there's a million different things, and within 3 appointments with a customer, I can hear how they play, the riffs that they're trying to attempt, and the
Right.
riffs that they're failing at, the tones that they're trying to dial in with their
right.
equipment. And it's like, if you know what to look for, it's a
Right.
game of connect the dots.
But it's like a thing. We figured this out because when you get just the right guitar sound, you play differently, and everything you just start writing songs.
Sure.
It just starts happening, and we realized, like when we first started playing through PAFs, and we're like, whoa, like it's hard to hit bad notes with these, and then you're like, imagine if you had a 100-watt Marshall, and you're playing fairly loud with these pickups.
Yeah.
You could, and you're rolling down the volumes, and
rule
getting
the world.
all these tones.
Yeah.
You can get all kinds. You see Jimmy Page is constantly changing and doing stuff like,
Yep.
And
And that's, maybe they responded, maybe they were more sensitive.
they
and
were also playing very
responded
loud.
Yeah.
Because people are like, oh, I want to sound like Clapton on Crossroads. He was loud.
Yeah.
And he was really awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was in the zone. He's playing away. But I want to talk more about you and what my wife had this idea, by the way. I have to give her credit. Well, she had the idea for the podcast, actually,
Oh,
to be
well.
honest. Well, Daniel and I talked about doing a podcast because Daniel got a super microphone. But my wife said, you should do a podcast. You listen to those things all day. But she had a really cool idea that we should ask everybody who's on it 5 questions, the same 5 questions.
All right.
Which would give it some kind of continuity. So, which we didn't ask Jeff. So
Ah.
I think that most of it came up, but we'll have to double back, and we're gonna do another podcast with Jeff anyway because he was the first one.
Right.
But it'll turn into something as it goes along. But I'm gonna ask you 5 questions
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Not a problem.
So, what were you doing before this?
I was a senior network administrator.
Oh, that's right.
I used to do programming. I would maintain web servers and
Right,
database
that's right, I
servers,
knew that.
and I fucking hate it. Never want to think about it ever again in my
Yeah,
life.
probably most people. I mean, it's not as fun as this.
Not at all,
Most
man.
things aren't gonna be.
Not at all.
But I forgot that you were like that
Yeah,
guy,
it was
right?
giving me panic attacks.
Like an IT
and
guy,
get
right?
outta here, no more
Okay.
that.
This is what are you listening to these days?
Oh, well, all kinds of stuff.
Right. I mean, I'm always listening to it. But
right now,
what's
on my-
particularly floating your boat? Like,
Well, right now on my turntable is Intervision, Stevie Wonder.
that was good.
The Dead are always in rotation in my place.
Mine too.
Yeah, it's like kind of a daily thing.
Yeah, you gotta listen to Jerry.
I've been actually getting back into some really cool early 80s, late 70s, early 80s English industrial music.
Oh my.
Yeah, I've been like getting back into Throbbing Gristle and all kinds of.
I know what
listen
that
to all-
is.
Yeah, you should check it out, man. Throbbing Gristle was.
I'm kind of old school, so like.
Yeah, you dig. Throbbing Gristle was a band from the UK, really big in like the occult and all this other stuff.
Whoa.
They
know
used to
anything
get,
about that.
oh, they're really cool. They used to get old military equipment and make sounds that would make their audience sick.
The brown noise. And all
Yeah,
that.
it's fucking great. Check them out, dude. They're really cool. If you're for the art aspect, they weren't
That's cool.
necessarily very musical,
Right.
but it wasn't about a hook and a riff and a chorus, and that's not what it's.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very cool, mind-altering music.
Okay, this is an interesting question. What would you be doing if you weren't doing this?
According to all my customers, I would be running a barbecue joint.
Right. Oh yeah, that's true.
That's
I've been to your place.
oh yeah, you know. There's usually,
That's right. You could have a good barbecue joint.
Yeah, there's usually various smoked sausages and stuff hanging.
Yeah, that's
in the
right.
kitchen.
Yeah, I should have saw that one coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing about Booya Amps. Go down there. There's food.
Yeah, we always feed you, man.
Yeah.
Come on down.
And there's there's other stuff too.
Yeah, amps too, but
Yeah, and other things that are fun.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Here's a cool question. What is one thing people don't know about you? Kind of weird question.
Let's see.
Right. It's not so like, and you don't have to answer it if it doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
but
No. Well,
what would be a funny thing that no one knows about Jamie Simpson?
I was classically trained on piano for 14 years.
There you go.
I played at Carnegie Hall when I was 13 years old.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Never knew that.
Nope.
I didn't even know you. Well, I know you play organ. I didn't know you
right.
played proper piano.
Yeah,
I've never
I
seen
actually,
you play piano.
That was kind of the thing. It was unfortunate because I was trained for a really long time, and by the time I had gotten older, I was getting into funkier, jammier, and harder stuff. And the instructor that I had, who was a fantastic teacher, obviously he was great, but he wasn't big into theory. He had or composition or
Right.
why would Bach write something like this? Just play what's on page,
Right.
and it was cool because I got stellar technique that
Right.
enabled me to play extremely complex pieces, but I kind of gravitated away from it, and that's when I started getting into jazz and
Right.
more into bass and all this other stuff, and I kind of pushed it to the back of my mind.
Right.
And as we were talking about before, I used to know that.
Right.
I sat down at my parents' piano and I was pissed that I couldn't remember anything. So we
Right,
just
that
got
happens.
we just got a piano in the living room. I'm going back over everything again.
Yeah, you
so
forget that. You go to play a song you played a million times when you were in your 20s, and you're like,
Can't even remember.
whoa, yeah, it's just
Can't
not
even
in.
remember it.
It's not on your hard drive
Yeah.
anymore.
It's like I'm pulling out music and I'm like, fuck, I can't read music anymore.
Right. Well, that's a skill that really goes. There was a
Yeah.
point where I went, I studied music. I studied classical guitar in college.
Oh.
So, and there was a point where I could read okay.
Right.
I
Yeah, it's like I look at it and I
haven't
can
read in
read
so
it,
long,
but-
it just looks like nothing.
Yeah.
But there's a point where I could, that's something you have to do every day. And the second you stop doing it, that skill just goes
away.
Now, I don't even think I could I would be like, what line is that?
Yeah,
It
what
would
the
really
hell is
be
that?
that.
Yeah.
But when you're doing it every day, you get good at it.
Right.
So,
And some things, like I was starting with pieces that I had played before, so I remembered them, and I'm like, oh, right, okay, now,
Yeah, it starts to come back because it's
Yeah.
all down there somewhere.
Yeah, oh man, is it dusty though? It's
Yeah.
down there, it's dusty.
Yeah, well,
as hell.
especially as you get older. I'm a little older than you are, even so. You just look at it as a hard drive. Like it's on your hard drive somewhere. You just can't find it.
Find it right now, yeah.
Yeah, you have to go back and access the file,
Right.
and then be like, where is it? Oh, well, I'll look for it.
Yeah.
And eventually you can find it somehow.
Right.
Or if you start to find little pieces of it, all start coming back.
Right.
The human mind is a really interesting.
It
thing.
really is. It's bizarre.
How it's all in there somewhere, especially musically.
Yeah.
You know,
just
like-
like riding a bike, but you just need that one little thing to.
And you need to not be thinking about it. Like the
Right.
second you stop thinking about it, you'll be able to play it.
Right.
It's like when you're teaching people guitar.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, just learn it, and then don't think about it, and then just play it.
Then just play it. And they're like,
And that's
"What do
why
you mean?"
people
It's
at
like,
gigs don't always play that well, because all of a sudden their adrenaline goes up and they start playing too fast, and then it's not the same.
They're too involved in
Yeah,
it.
you start thinking about, oh, that guy's looking at me, I want to impress him. It's not the same thing. You can't perform at that level unless you've done it
Right.
a million times. But it's there. You can play it perfectly at home.
But
But
it's
if two people stare at you, it falls apart.
Right, but that's an emotional connection thing, and
Right.
it's like, it doesn't matter if, even still at the beginning of a podcast, it's like
Right.
you get a little.
Right. Yeah, this guy, didn't freak me out that much, but we did do 2 practice ones
Right,
before
yeah.
we did Jeff's, but Daniel got really drunk, so we never aired them. We will air them, though. Daniel's right there, so he could hear us. But there was a little bit of an alcohol situation.
Issue.
Yeah, but we will air those someday when Daniel's not in his current situation.
And we did make some very funny videos earlier today. And here's the final question of the 5 questions. What is on the horizon for Jamie Simpson? Do you have any things you're working on? Where do you see yourself going? Is there anything you really feel like building?
There's always stuff I feel like building, but there's the thing that I really want to do at some point is I would love to not be in production, as I am right now, but for people who are in production, at some point, I mean, a lot of people who have my amps and everything, they've owned a bunch of different types of amplifiers, and I build a different amplifier from what's out there. I put a lot of attention to detail and the stuff in there because I know who it's going to. There's been some companies that have approached me about building them circuits, licensing circuits out and stuff like that, and I would love to continue on going down routes like that.
Because I think my amp is a perfect production amp.
Right. It's
For
just
someone who wants wattage that's clean, no master, killing tremolo,
great
awesome reverb, bring it to any gig, it'll sound good.
Yeah.
Like
it's pretty light, too.
That could be a production amp easily.
Right.
It's a perfect gig amp for a guy like me. Like I don't play crazy distorted.
Right.
So that has no master.
Right.
Because everyone has a distortion box. I don't really think amps need a master, but a lot of people want Marshall style
use
amps.
them. Right.
But I always gravitate more towards the kind of Fender style amp personally.
Right.
It has nothing to do with business, but
Right,
personally,
yeah, of course.
I play clean, I play country and stuff like that. So, but to me, that's the perfect grab and go amp.
Right.
You could take that, plug it into anything. If you have a couple pedals that you like,
and it takes pedals, great. Too,
yeah.
So it's
you
like
put in your favorite distortion box in front of that, and you're home free. So that's a perfect, production thing for a guy who wants that thing.
Right.
So, but most amp builders would just call it a thing and call it a day.
Call it a day.
Right.
And, it would become, at that point, just an amp that would be in another store that you'd walk past.
Right, because you don't know the name.
Because you don't know the name, or you never heard what it
Right,
sounded
if you
like.
haven't been on this podcast or wherever and heard of Jamie Simpson
Right,
and
or
Booya Amps.
a Google search.
And you're not out there advertising them and pushing them. So
Right.
that's what we figure the podcast will do is, we can't hit people to pieces of gear that they wouldn't. They're not going to see in a guitar center. They're not going to see maybe locally because your amps aren't in any stores except maybe mine.
Yeah, you're the only one.
Right. And
You're the only one.
And if someone buys that one, then we're in trouble.
Gotta get another one.
Right. So we make more, but so because most amp guys are looking to get their amp line off the ground. Like some do repair, some don't. Like Adam does some repairs, but you are really a repair guy.
Right.
Because a lot of the guitar builders become that. They could, a lot of them are just builders, but a lot of them do repairs to pay the bills.
Dude, repair, I mean, to
like
me,
Adam from Iron Horse, Alex, from Iron Horse builds from what I gather.
Sure.
I've seen stuff he builds, and he builds amazing things, but he's just the best
repair guy.
guy,
The best.
especially around here that I know of.
Right.
He could pull apart an old Martin, put it back together, and he's killer. So he's like, I don't have time to build. He's as busy as you are.
Right.
You go to his shop, and there's, he's not even taking in new gear.
Right, and that's essentially
Stuff right now, right?
Yeah, that's where I'm at because.
Well, the good guys, I always say, Alex is the guitar version of you. Just really good, really cool. Knows old gear, knows new gear, can get it done. It's cool.
Right.
A lot of those guys who got really good at it, were just dicks.
Yeah, and that was a lot of the people.
They
I
keep your
started
shit for
dealing
2
with.
years, and be asshole to you when you showed up. Like you guys are cool at least. Because most of those guys were old anyway. They don't like young kids.
Right,
can you fix my Marshall? They just thought we were dipshits. So,
I mean, even still, man, people come by, they'll call me up, they'll book an appointment, they'll show up, and I'm 38 years old. It's like,
they're expecting to see an old man. You can fix a Hammond organ.
Yeah, you sure you've worked on this Marshall before?
Right. Alex is young too.
Yeah.
I was surprised when you showed up. I was like, I was young.
Yeah.
You're younger than I am. It was like, you're gonna pull apart an old Martin at that age.
Damn
Those guys
right.
were old guys
Yeah.
who could do that. And they would take 3 years to do your thing, and you'd call them and be like, I have your guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
You do.
Yeah,
It's
the
pretty-
amp guys are the same way, man. And it's like, I've gotten many a choice phone call from a bunch of different repair shops. They're like, who the hell do you think you are? And I'm like, dude, look, just because I'm doing the work that you guys let sit in your shop for years,
Right.
don't get pissed at me.
Right.
Like
if you're good,
these
you're
people
good.
want their
What are you gonna do
stuff-
about it?
These people want their stuff back, and if you can fix it, that's cool. I get it, but dude, these people want their stuff back, and
Yeah.
everybody's money's green. So,
Right. So if you're in this area, or if you can ship your stuff, ship it to Jamie. So I think we're going to start to wrap up because from what I gather, we're running way over an hour already. So
Okay.
we could have sat there and did this for hours longer. So
Hours.
obviously there's going to be a podcast number 2 with Jamie. Because,
Looking forward to
and
it.
what we're looking to do at our podcast is just sit and do this and talk to our friends, about all kinds of guitar gear. But we didn't even get, I felt that way with Jeff when we did that. We could have just kept talking for the rest of the afternoon.
Sure.
Which is basically this is what we do on the phone on your average day.
Right. Exactly. But we touch on so many different things that it's like, there's all these different techniques and
Yeah, and different. We could have
legends of lore.
talked about a million things, but we
Right.
talked about what we talked about. But because I don't plan this out, I didn't, except for the 5 questions that that I had going. I don't want to plan it out because I want it to go to wherever it wants to go.
Right.
I think that would be more interesting for people to listen to, and hopefully you folks at home find this interesting. So, if those of you that don't know, I don't know how you're listening to it now, but this is on our YouTube station, and it's now available on iTunes. And if you want to learn more about any of this stuff, my website is mountainCatGuitars.com. And Jamie, we could find you where?
www.booyaamps.com. That's BOOYAAMPS.com.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We
guys.
had a great time.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all for listening. And we have a bunch of podcasts planned. And I want to thank Daniel and Mike back there for helping us do all the stuff we can't do. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you. Guitars are great.